What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover. And she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house and went to my mom's for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to plant the sunflower seeds. So I came back up here and I drove up and saw and called.
Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this is the first time we see him touch his face, touches his nose. Look, you'll hear people say if a person touches their nose, they're lying. No, we're not those folks. What we're saying is look for a deviation in baseline and ask yourself why. It's a pertinent question and a hard question.
What made you come out here tonight?
And he uses his left hand, touches his face. Suddenly, he does one of the most powerful male adapters that exist. I call it butterfly thighs. And if you ever want to see, men will flip their legs, their thighs in and out that way. Younger men do it a lot, and it has a lot of impact. So that's a big comforting move for a guy to do. All an adapter is a way for you to release nervous energy. And if we do them enough, they become habitual. So if you don't know what yours are, the way you release nervous energy, ask someone next to you. Ask someone who knows you well, because they know what you do when you're releasing nervous energy. Maybe you pick your nails, flip your hair, do something like that. Then he starts to tell a long story that has no pertinence to anything we're talking about. And that is, I went to see my mama. My mama's sick. She's got dementia.
My mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious.
And he goes on and 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 on. And he gives you the cookbook. We call that chaff and redirect because an aircraft drops chaff to hope a missile will follow it rather than the story. That's what he's doing. He's dropping lots of details, hoping you'll follow that. That's odd usually, but again, my wife and son are lying 100 yards away, dead. Somebody murdered them. And I'm going to tell you about my mom's Jell-O she had for lunch. Come on. And he's adapting like all hell with that issue, with his hands and with the other. He goes to that dog lover. She fools with a dog. Boom. One shoulder rises. We hadn't seen that yet. We see a single shoulder. We often associate that with discomfort in the information they're sharing. He does a pause. He does a down left, looks down left, which we associate with internal voice. And he does a head scratch. We associate all of those things with thinking, with giving yourself time to think. He doesn't say what he saw.
I drove up and saw.
Either with words or with body language or with tone. None of that.
And called.
I think the female law enforcement officer in the back senses it because watch her cross her abdomen in discomfort as he's telling that story. I bet if you went and talked to them and say, this guy, day one, we thought he killed his wife. That's exactly what I think you'd see. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, there's a cascade of negative statements, victim statements, really. The parents are ill and anxious. Maggie's a dog lover, doesn't love him, loves the dogs. She fools with the dogs. That's negative. Rather than going, she looks after those dogs so well. It's she fooling with the dogs. And he's texted her and there's no response. So she's not attentive to him. And then Paul is associated with sunflowers dying. So again, not being able to, I mean, that will, more of this story will come out and maybe he's laying down this story early, but essentially everybody is inept. Ultimately, parents are non-functioning.
Mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital.
Wife loves animals.
Maggie's a dog lover. She fools with the dogs.
Messes around and doesn't answer the phone.
Tried to call her when I left. Texted her. No response.
And Paul can't look after sunflowers.
Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to plant the sunflower seeds.
So really casting a bad light on the victims there, and him being around people who can't look after themselves or the things that are important, or him. That alone is a loud flag. You can't have a loud flag, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a loud flag. It's a loud flag. Chase, what do you got on this one?
This is detail overload. There's a few things I want you to notice as you go through the video again in just a second. Number one, the detail and just the chronology of everything is loaded and piled high. But none of the details are about finding out who did this. There is no request to investigate the scene or talk about the word murder. It's the last word in the world that he wants to come out of his mouth at a moment like this. And the confirmation glances back and forth where he's checking that detective with every detail, in this clip especially, just to make sure he's buying it, are just a classic hallmark of deception. It's one of the things we look for when we see a lot of other behaviors and they're outside of baseline, like we're seeing here. And when he says, obviously nobody was in there, I think he's telling us it was obvious to him that nobody was going to be in that house. Then finally, we have something called severity softening and lack of detail. There's tons of minute, perfect little details about the intricate process he's going through with these sunflower seeds.
Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died.
Then, what's the detail on the crime scene?
I drove up and saw and called.
That's the difference between sunflower seeds versus dead family members here. Scott?
After the question, you're right, Greg. He touches the middle part of his head there, the middle of his brow there. Haven't seen that yet, of just other than rubbing his whole face. And then he does this really quick request for approval. That's another one of Greg's things, where your eyebrows go up as you're looking to get something okayed, or you're asking a question, you need some information. His eyebrows go up, and he starts adapting. I guess what you call that butterfly thing, Greg. And then he starts using his Kleenex as an adapter, which we talked about what happened earlier. We talked about that was going to happen. A whole lot of movement in comparison to the baseline we've seen up to this point, because he's been fairly still up till now. This is where it makes me think something would be up with this. Then he starts going down this list of stuff, and his voice is, and then this, and then it's just a list.
I went to check on them and Maggie, and I knew she'd gone to the kennel. Tried to call her, texted her, no response.
He's rehearsed this. He knew what he was going to say when he came into this. When this question came up, he's got his list of things that happened and things that he was going to talk about. We see a couple of those little shoulder shrugs, a single shoulder shrug here and a single one there, and then a full one there. But the thing is with shoulder shrugs, and you'll hear a lot of things about them, but here's what we are under the impression or understand that shoulder shrugs indicate, is when one shoulder goes up, that indicates the person isn't sure about their answer. Not that they're being deceptive, but it just says they're not sure about what that answer is. And I think he's afraid. He's trying to make sure he's covering every basis. He's thinking about that. I guess in his brain, maybe he's thinking, okay, I've got that covered. Let me see what else. Yeah, I got that. I think as he goes down this list, that's why we're seeing those things. But throughout this, he still hasn't used that Kleenex for what you use them for. All right, we good?
Mm-hmm.
The eyewitness is you.
What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them and Maggie. Maggie's a dog lover, and she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house and went to my mom's for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to plant the sunflower seeds. So I came back up here and I drove up and saw and called.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.